More than 1 in 3 square feet of office space in downtown Portland is sitting empty right now, 36.5% as of the second quarter of this year per CBRE. And the city of Portland has written its own code that will waive up to $3 million in fees to turn one of these buildings into apartments. If you have written off downtown Portland as a place to live or invest, there are 2 things in that sentence worth a second look. And one of them is going to surprise you, because that vacancy number actually has been falling. I'm Jenny Turner with Lovejoy Real Estate, and we're not going to talk about buying a house, but we are going to make sure that you understand the real estate market and make sure that you don't regret the house that you buy or sell. Today, I want to walk you through what Portland is actually offering, what the code actually says, and the honest answer to the question everybody asks me next, which is, okay, so which buildings? That answer is not what the headlines suggest. Let's get into it. First off, I'm a real estate broker. I'm not an attorney. I'm not a CPA. I'm not a structural engineer, which is going to become relevant in about 4 minutes. Everything in this video comes from primary sources: Portland City Code Title 17 and 24, Prosper Portland's own program page and the board resolution behind its loan program, CBRE's Q2 2026 Portland Office Report, Washington's Department of Revenue, City of Calgary. All of it is linked in the description, and honestly, I'd rather you read the code yourself than take my word for any of it. If you are actively working on a conversion or buying into a building that has been converted, talk to a real estate attorney about the recorded covenant terms and talk to a CPA about how any of this lands on your return. Do that now, not after you have signed something. There is a real deadline buried in here, and it's closer than most people think. Here's the story that has been sitting around since the pandemic. Downtown Portland is empty. It's a ghost town. Nobody wants to live there. I've had more than a few clients tell me flatly that they'd never consider downtown, based on an impression they formed a few years ago and haven't revisited since. So rather than just argue with the impression, let me give you the numbers as they sit today, and you can decide what's changed. The main question for this video is simple. Portland has put real money behind converting empty offices into housing. Is anything actually happening, and does it change what you should do? Section 1, the right number and which number you're hearing. Start with geography, because this is where almost every conversation about downtown Portland goes sideways. You will hear that Portland's office vacancy rate is 27%. That is true, and the wrong number for this conversation. 27% is CBRE's total market figure for the whole Fort County Metro, and it folds in submarkets like Wilsonville at 4.8% and Clackamas at 7.8%. Averaging downtown together with Wilsonville tells you almost nothing useful about either one. Downtown by itself, what CBRE labels total downtown, is 36.5%. The Central Business District alone is 38.5%. For context, downtown sat at 10.4% at the end of 2019. Now here's the part that the narrative has not caught up to. That downtown number has come down 2 quarters in a row. It fell 0.3 of a point in the second quarter, and the market recorded about 115,000 square feet of positive net absorption, which is the industry's way of saying more space got filled than emptied out. Year-to-date absorption is still negative, but it's roughly 392,000 square feet better than at the same point last year. This is not a hole that is still getting deeper. This is a very deep hole that has finally stopped getting deeper. I want to be careful to not oversell that, though. 1 quarter of a positive absorption is a data point, not a recovery. Downtown still has one of the highest vacancy rates of any submarket in this region, and it is still more than 3 times its pre-pandemic level. But if your working model is, it keeps getting worse, that model is out of date, and I'd rather you update it than keep making decisions based on it. Okay, part 2, why the math doesn't work and the exact line of code that breaks it. So why doesn't the market fix this on its own? If a building is 40% empty and Portland needs housing, why isn't every landlord downtown drawing up apartment plans? The honest answer is a stack of costs people underestimate: mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and then the one that breaks the spreadsheet, which is seismic. Here is the exact mechanism, and this is the part of the video I most want you to remember, because it is checkable and almost nobody explains it. Portland City Code Chapter 24.85 sorts every building occupancy into a relative hazard classification. Table 24.85-A puts offices, occupancy group B, at hazard level 3. It puts apartments, R2, at hazard level 4. So converting an office into housing is a move into a higher hazard classification. Then Table 24.85-B tells you what triggers that. If more than 1/3 of the building's net floor area changes, or the occupant load goes up by 150 or more, what does that mean? ASCE 41 BPOE standard. Here it is. The code is explicit that the requirement applies to the entire building, not just the floors being converted. So in English, what does this mean? Let me tell you. It means any conversion worth doing clears that threshold easily. Convert 4 floors of a 10-story building and you are already over a third. And now you are not renovating 4 floors. You are structurally retrofitting an entire tower to pay for those floors. See the difference there? Code requires the entire building to be retrofit. I had to read that table 3 times before I believed it. That one requirement is the single biggest reason why the Portland office conversions pencil badly and why these projects set as a maybe someday conversations for years. Charles and I actually looked at converting one of our office spaces in our building in Northwest into 2 one-bedroom apartments. And the city was going to make us put in sprinklers for the entire building, not just those 2 apartments. And that cost alone made the entire project not even an option. And now I have empty office space waiting to be rented, not 2 apartments that I could have rented out. So it's a problem on a little scale and on these big tower conversations as well. One point, because I hear this told wrong constantly, is that the seismic trigger is a Portland rule, not a state one. Oregon's Building Codes Division says plainly that nothing in state code automatically forces a seismic upgrade just because you are reusing an existing building. Portland wrote its own under authority the state code hands to cities, which also means that Portland can change it. And in 2023, Portland did. So what is the city actually offering now? March of 2023, Portland City Council passed 2 ordinances. The fee waiver got the headlines, but the other one mattered more. Ordinance 191203 permanently amended Chapter 24.85 so that office to residential conversions meet the ASCE 41 BPOE standard, which is a life safety standard. Occupants get out of the building safely after a major quake. That is instead of the tougher standard that treats the retrofit like new construction. It is a permanent change to city code, and unlike a fee waiver, it reduces what you actually spend on steel and concrete. So the money, Portland City Code 17-14-070 subsection I, office to residential conversion projects are exempt from all system development charges. SDCs are the one-time fees a developer pays for the load a project puts on sewer, water, parks, and transportation. On a large building, they run into the millions. But there are some details that the headlines are leaving out. 4, in fact. 1, the cap is the actual cost of the required seismic retrofit, or $3 million, whichever is less. It reimburses the seismic work. Nobody is handing anyone $3 million. 2, the application deadline is July 1st, 2027. That is written into the code, 11 months from today. This is not a standing program. It is a closing window. 3, there is a recorded covenant. The building stays residential for 10 years, and it has to be recorded into the deed records before the city will issue the building permit. There is also a $600 processing fee per application. 4, and I had this one myself until I sat down with the actual code. Eligibility is not drawn on a downtown map. Subsection I.3 says that the lot has to sit in an area the city rates with an opportunity score of 5 on its opportunity map, which is a citywide map published by the Portland Housing Bureau. It's not the central city plan district. So if you're evaluating a specific building, the question is not, is it downtown? The question is, does this particular lot qualify under this particular program? Now, there is a second pot of money, and this one is genuinely a subsidy rather than a waiver. Prosper Portland's board approved the PCEF Central Cities Building Conversion Embodied Carbon Pilot Loan. This went into place on October 8th, 2025. Up to $60,000 per unit for the embodied carbon benefit of reusing the existing structure, plus up to $25,000 per unit for energy efficiency work. 2% interest, 10-year term, and 10% of the original principal is forgiven on each anniversary as long as the project stays in compliance. Hold the term for 10 years and the whole loan goes away. Now the terms are narrow. Central Business District only. At least 20 new units. Rents have to stay affordable to households between 60 and 120% of median family income for 10 years after completion. And the total program allocation is up to $7 million with a stated goal of lending it to at least 2 projects. 2 projects. That's the scale we're actually talking about. So section 4, which is the wrinkle that almost nobody has caught. Here's the part that changes how you should read everything I just said. Look at subsection J of that same code section added by Ordinance 192082, effective August 15th, 2025. Portland exempts all new dwelling units in the city from system development charges for any building permit issued through September 30th, 2028. Not just conversions, all new housing. The stated council goal is 5,000 new units. No seismic requirement, no 10-year covenant. The only real condition is a construction milestone. You have to actually start building and pass a foundation inspection within 12 months of permit issuance, or for a conversion inside an existing building, an insulation and vapor barrier inspection. Or you post a construction completion guarantee up front. Sit with that for a second. As of today, a conversion project is SDC exempt anyway, on easier terms, with no covenant and no seismic condition attached to the exemption itself. So if you hear someone say the conversion waiver is the thing making all these projects work right now, that is about a year out of date. Today, the conversion-specific waiver matters mostly for projects that will land after that 2028 window closes, or for developers who want the seismic reimbursement stacked on top. Quick, honest question, and I do actually read this. When was the last time you actually walked around downtown Portland yourself, rather than going off of what you have heard? Drop the year in the comments. I'm generally curious how stale the average mental picture is. If you're in the greater Portland, Salem, Eugene, or Southwest Washington area and you want to think out loud about whether a downtown property fits what you're actually trying to do, that is a conversation we are glad to have. No pressure, no obligation, no pitch at the end of it. And if your move takes you somewhere else entirely, I have a network of agents I know personally in markets across the country, not just names off a list. People I would hand my whole family to. Happy to make the introduction. So part 5, which buildings? The honest answer. This is the question I get every single time I bring this up. Which buildings? Here's my honest answer, and I want to be precise about what I checked. I went through Portland Permitting and Development's conversion page, Prosper Portland's program page, and the board resolution behind the loan. As of today, no City of Portland or Prosper Portland source names a single permitted, under construction, or completed office to residential conversion. Prosper Portland's own page, last updated in May, said the pilot loan was approved in October 2025, and that, quote, with limited funding, we are working with development-ready pilot programs. That is the entire project update. That is the state of the play. The policy is ahead of the concrete. Anybody telling you towers are already getting turned into condos downtown is getting ahead of the record. And I am not going to name buildings I cannot verify just to make this video punchier. But what I can tell you is how to find out. If you want to know whether a specific building is in play, email PP&D's process management team directly. That is the actual intake for the conversions. They assign you a point of contact, assemble a project team from the development review bureaus, walk the buildings with you, and hold an early assistance meeting with the environmental services, fire and rescue, housing, transportation, urban forestry, and water before you draw plans. That is the real support, and it's the closest things to a project list that exist. Note what it's not, though. There's no fast-tracked or shortened permit review. Nothing on Portland.gov's promises a compressed timeline, and I have seen that claim repeated a lot. So what do other cities show you about the time frame? Portland is not running an untested experiment, and looking at who is further along tells you something useful about how long this actually takes. Washington did this at the state level. E2 SSB 6175, Chapter 332 of the 2024 Session Laws, effective June 6, 2024, lets Washington cities create a sales and use tax deferral for converting what the statute itself calls underutilized commercial property into multifamily housing. At least 10% of the units have to be affordable to low-income houses, defined at or below 80% of the median family income. Hold the requirements for 10 years, and the deferred tax is waived outright. Applications close on June 30th, 2034. Seattle built its program on that authority. Calgary is the one that has actually finished buildings. Their program pays up to $75 a square foot, and the city reports it's supporting 21 conversion projects, transforming a combined 2.6 million square feet of office space into 2,667 new homes, one 226-room hotel, and a hostel. Worth knowing that its most recent application window closed July 27th of this year, so it's not currently taking application. Calgary's own terms of reference score applicants on the access to natural light and give explicit preference to buildings with operable windows. That is the physical screen that decides everything. Deep floor plates where no daylight reaches the middle are hard, expensive conversions. Smaller floor plates with windows that can open are the candidates. True in Calgary and true here. The pattern across all three cities is identical. Public money covers a slice of the conversion cost so the project pencils. Only the plumbing differs. Portland uses a fee waiver plus a forgivable loan. Washington uses a tax deferral. Calgary writes a grant. And here is a timeline lesson. Calgary's program has been running for years, and its first completed conversion opened in April 2024. Portland approved its loan program in October of last year. Do that math before you build a plan around finished units. What should you check before you buy into a converted building? If you do end up looking at a unit inside a converted building, your due diligence looks a little different than it would for a 40-year-old condo. Ask whether the seismic retrofit is complete and finalized, not planned. A building mid-retrofit is genuinely different risk profile than one already brought up to standard. And given everything that we just covered in Chapter 24.85, this is the single most consequential question that you can ask. Also ask for the reserve study and ask specifically how the association funds maintenance on systems that started at commercial grade. Converted buildings sometimes carry mechanical equipment that was never designed for residential duty cycles. An inspector who has done conversions before is worth the extra fee. Also ask whether that 10-year residential covenant is recorded against the property and exactly what it obligates. That is a title item and a question for a real estate attorney or title officer rather than really your agent. And ask your lender whether that specific building has financing approval. Some lenders are cautious about condo financing in buildings with a short residential track record. So I think we are going to see that be a problem as this move into this. So let's talk about somebody called Sarah. She has been looking at a downtown condo because so much of what she does is close by, and she expects street level activity to come back. What Sarah might not know is that there's now a program written into city code built specifically to change the map on those towers, and that the way to find out whether a given building is in play is to ask permitting and development directly because the city has not published a list. I want to be equally straight with her about the other half. In theory, cutting a developer's conversion cost should show up in what these units eventually list for. In practice, we have no Portland deliveries to check that against, and no rule says a subsidy lands in the buyer's pocket rather than the developer's margin. Treat pricing as an open question, not a promise. So, to answer the actual question, is anything actually happening, and does it change what you should do? If you are a buyer looking downtown, the incentives are real and they are in the code. But do not buy on the expectation of a transformation running on a schedule. Buy the unit, the building, and the block on their merits as they exist today. Everything in this video is upside you are not paying for. If you are selling downtown, none of this moves your comps this year. What it may change is a story you can tell about the next 5, and it's worth having a straight answer on it versus just guessing. If you already own downtown, whether you live in it or you rent it out, watch delivery pace. Whether more supply nets out positive or negative for your specific unit, I generally do not know. More units cut one way, more people on the street supporting restaurants and shops nearby cut the other. What I would watch for is one moving faster on your immediate blocks. If you are an investor or building owner, 2 dates. July 1st, 2027 to apply for the conversion SDC exemption with the seismic reimbursement, and September 30th, 2028 for a permit under the blanket housing exemption. If the seismic reimbursement matters to your numbers, the 11-month clock is the binding one. And start with the opportunity map, not a downtown map. If you are a landlord, the near-term regional supply picture is thin, and conversions swim upstream against that versus adding to it. Treat the pipeline counts floating around as directional. They come from trade research, not the city's own permit tallies, and I would want a fresh pull before even making any decisions on them. 3 things that actually changed since the version of the story that you probably heard is 1, downtown office vacancy is 36.5%, not 27%, and it has now fallen 2 quarters in a row. 2, the conversion fee waiver has a deadline written into the code, July 1st, 2027. And separately, every new housing unit in Portland is exempt from system development charges through September 2028, regardless of what it used to be. And 3, nobody has published a finished conversion. The policy is real. The buildings, though, are not there yet. If that is a more current picture than what you had 20 minutes ago, hit subscribe. I cover this kind of Portland shift every week, and I would rather have you have the boring verified version than the exciting wrong one. Our contact info is right below in this video if you want a real conversation. I'm Jenny Turner with Lovejoy Real Estate. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.